At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed against the nightstand, jolting me out of a deep sleep. It was a notification from my banking app. I squinted against the harsh blue light, my brain still foggy, until I saw the numbers. A pending authorization for $5,249. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on the stairs. That wasn't a grocery run. That was a down payment on a car. I immediately opened the connected shopping app to see what was happening. At the top of the orders list sat a professional streamer dream bundle, a high-end cinema camera, lighting rigs, and an audio mixer. My hands shook as I clicked on the order details. The purchase method wasn't a hack. It was voice authorization by the smart speaker located in my parents' kitchen. I played the audio log stored in the app. "Alexa, order the streamer bundle in the cart," my brother Auden's voice said, casual and confident. "Ordering now, charging card ending in 4589, the robotic voice replied. He must have added the item to the cart manually on the family iPad earlier in the day, then used the speaker late at night to bypass the CVV code prompt. "My name is Sierra. I'm 26, a freelance graphic designer living in the converted garage behind my parents' house. For 2 years, I had saved every single dollar that didn't go to rent or food. That $5,000 wasn't spare cash. It was the security deposit for an apartment I was supposed to sign a lease on next week. I threw on a hoodie and stormed out of the garage toward the main house. I expected to find him asleep, but when I burst into the living room, Auden was sitting on the couch, a beer raised in the air, toasting an invisible audience. "What did you do?" I screamed, my voice cracking with panic. $5,000, Auden. Are you insane?" Auden didn't even flinch. He just took a slow sip of his beer and grinned lazily. "Relax, Sierra. It's an investment. I'm finally launching my podcast network. You gotta spend money to make money, right?" "That's my money. For my apartment," I yelled, lunging toward the coffee table where his phone sat. "Cancel it. Right now." He was faster. He snatched his phone up and held it out of reach, laughing like we were kids fighting over the remote control. "Don't be such a buzzkill. You're always so uptight. Once I get the sponsorships rolling in, I'll pay you back double. Consider yourself my first angel investor." He wasn't sorry. He was never sorry. He truly believed he was entitled to whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. Before I could scream again, the overhead lights flipped on, blinding me. My parents stood in the hallway doorway in their bathrobes, blinking sleepily. "Sierra, what on earth are you screeching about at this hour?" my mother snapped, pulling her robe tighter. They weren't looking at the thief sitting on the couch. They were glaring at me for disturbing the peace. 10 minutes later, we were sitting at the kitchen table for an emergency family meeting. But it wasn't an intervention for Auden, it was a lecture for me. "He's just trying to get his career off the ground, honey," my mother said soothingly, patting Auden's hand. "You know how hard it is for creatives these days. You should be supportive." I stared at her, incredulous. Supportive? He stole $5,000 from my business account using a speaker I bought. My dad leaned forward, his face hardening. He didn't care about the theft. He cared that I was rocking the boat. Auden was the golden boy, the visionary who just needed a break. I was just the worker bee. "Listen here," Dad said, his voice low and serious. "Your brother is finally showing some initiative. We're not going to crush his spirit just because you're selfish with your savings." Then he dropped the hammer. "If you cancel that order and humiliate your brother before he even starts, you can pack your bags tonight," Dad threatened. "No more living in the guest house. You'll be out on the street." I felt the air leave the room. They meant it. I was trapped between losing my life savings and instant homelessness. I stood up, shaking with a rage so deep it made me dizzy. Without another word, I walked out of the main house and back to my garage, slamming the door behind me. Back in my room, I hyperventilated. I paced the small floor space, my mind racing. If I kept the order, I lost the apartment and stayed trapped here forever. If I canceled it, they kicked me out tomorrow. I grabbed my phone and opened the shopping app again, desperate for a solution. I saw that the cheap accessory cables in the order had already shipped, so I couldn't touch them. But the main streamer bundle, the $5,000 item, was still in ordered status. I had a narrow window. My thumb hovered over the cancel item button. I knew if I pressed it, an email notification would blast to the main family account Auden had access to. He would know instantly, and I'd be homeless by dawn. I was about to throw my phone across the room when I noticed a different button next to the shipping details. Edit order. I clicked it breathlessly. I couldn't change the items, but the shipping address was still editable for the main bundle. A cold, sharp idea formed in my mind. I opened a new browser tab and searched for the address of the Main Street Police Precinct. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I replaced my home address. In the company/attention to field, which appears boldly on the label, but usually looks like a department name to drivers, I typed ATTN, fraud unit/pending evidence. I hit save. The app confirmed the change. My heart pounded against my ribs. To the delivery driver, it would look like an official delivery to a police department. To the police, it would be a red flag. The next morning required the performance of a lifetime. If Auden suspected anything, he would check the app and see the new address. I had to make him feel completely secure. I walked into the main kitchen, where Auden was already pouring coffee, looking smug. I took a deep breath and forced a tired, defeated look onto my face. "Look," I said quietly, staring at the floor. "I was upset last night, but Mom and Dad are right. I want to support you. Just promise you'll actually pay me back this time." Auden's grin spread across his face. He walked over and slung a heavy arm around my shoulders, squeezing a little too hard. "That's the spirit, sis. I knew you'd come around. You won't regret it." Later that afternoon, the delivery truck pulled up with the small box of cables that I hadn't been able to divert. Auden made a big show of having me sign for it at the door. "See? It's all happening," he said, taking the box from me. It was a power move, a reminder that he had won, and I had submitted. I smiled faintly and went back to the garage. Externally, I was the beaten-down sister. But internally, I was screaming with anticipation. The app said the big delivery was scheduled for Friday. The countdown had begun. 5 days until delivery. 5 days until the bomb dropped. I knew that the moment that package was scanned at the police station, nuclear war would break out in my family. I couldn't be living in the blast zone when the detonation happened. I had to be gone before Friday. I called my best friend from college, frantic and whispering in the bathroom. "I need a place to crash, just for a week. Please." She didn't ask questions. She just gave me the gate code to her complex. Now came the hard part, smuggling my life out of the house under the noses of 3 people who were watching me like hawks. I couldn't move furniture yet, but I had to secure my expensive work files and legal documents. If my parents realized I was leaving, they would confiscate my keys and lock me out before I was ready. I was carefully wrapping my external hard drives in a sweater when the doorknob turned. My heart hammered against my ribs. I threw a heavy blanket over the open box just as my mom walked in. "What are you doing in here?" she asked, her eyes darting around the room suspiciously. "Just cleaning up," I lied, my voice tight. "Making space. It was getting cluttered." She sniffed, looking unimpressed. "Good. If you're going to support your brother's business, you should look the part of a professional partner, not a slob living in a garage." She left without lifting the blanket. I exhaled, my hands trembling. It was too close. 2 days later, the first crack in my plan appeared. I was in the kitchen making toast when Auden walked in, staring at his phone with a confused frown. He was logged into my Amazon account on his device, tracking the shipment. "Hey, Sierra," he said, tapping the screen. "This tracking info looks weird. It just says 100 Main Street." My blood ran cold. The app's summary view was truncating the address, cutting off the ATTN, fraud unit line. If he clicked see details, he would see everything. I had to distract him before he tapped that button. "Oh yeah," I said quickly. I changed the delivery method to a secure locker downtown. It's inside the municipal building lobby. Remember those porch pirates that stole the neighbor's packages last month? I didn't want $5,000 of gear sitting on the doorstep. Auden paused, his thumb hovering over the screen. He processed the lie. Then, his face relaxed into a grin. Smart, he said, nodding. That's actually really good thinking, sis. I can't have my lenses getting jacked by some random thief. Good looking out. Just protecting the investment, I replied, taking a bite of toast so I wouldn't have to speak again. He bought it because it flattered his ego. He thought I was serving him, when really I was setting the trap. By Wednesday, the financial reality of what Auden had done started to choke me. Because the bank had authorized the massive charge, my available balance was effectively zero. I had bills on autopay that were going to bounce, and my real estate agent was calling me every 3 hours. Sierra, I need that deposit by Friday morning, she left on my voicemail. The landlord has another couple interested. If the money isn't in escrow, you lose the apartment. The delivery was scheduled for Friday afternoon. It was going to be a photo finish. If the refund didn't come through immediately after the police report was filed, I would win the moral victory, but lose my home. I had zero cash for gas or groceries, let alone enough to pay a mover. Humiliated but desperate, I drove to a pawn shop on the edge of town. I emptied my bag onto the counter, a designer purse I had bought after my first big contract, and a backup tablet. $600 for the lot, the guy behind the counter grunted. It was worth at least $1,000, but I didn't have the leverage to negotiate. Fine, I snapped. As I took the cash, a cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. That $600 had to cover the moving van and food for the week. My parents were eating steak dinners paid for by their credit cards, while I was pawning my belongings just to survive. That anger fueled me. I wasn't just teaching them a lesson anymore. I was going to war. By Thursday night, the atmosphere in the main house was almost unbearable. Auden had already started dismantling the living room to make space for his studio. He had pushed the family sofa against the wall and was measuring angles for lighting rigs that hadn't even arrived yet. I watched from the doorway as he paced around, talking loudly on the phone to one of his friends. Yeah, bro, top-tier gear. The camera alone is cinema quality. We're going to dominate the charts. My parents sat at the dining table, watching him with beaming pride. They looked like they were watching a toddler take his first steps. When they noticed me standing there, their expressions soured. Don't look so gloom and doom, Sierra, my dad said, shaking his head. You almost ruined this for him with your selfishness. Look at how happy he is. This is what family does. You're right, I said, my voice flat. This is exactly what this family does. I walked away before I said too much. They thought I was defeated, sulking in the corner while the golden child ascended. They had no idea that I had already printed out the bank statements, proving the transaction was unauthorized. Let them have their celebration. It would be their last one. Friday morning arrived, delivery day. I had arranged for a man with a van service to arrive at 10 a.m. sharp. My parents were at their weekly church group, and Auden, true to form, was sleeping in until noon. The van pulled up silently. We have 20 minutes, I told the driver. Everything in the garage goes except my backpack. We worked in a blur of motion. My desk, my chair, my clothes, and my mattress were thrown into the back of the van. I kept my laptop in my backpack so I could work from my friend's place. I left the garage bare, except for the dust bunnies and the silence. It was eerie seeing the space I had lived in for 3 years emptied in minutes. As the van engine roared to life, I saw the curtains in Auden's room twitch. He was waking up. He looked out the window, eyes bleary, staring at the moving van pulling out of the driveway. My phone buzzed immediately. What's with the truck? I sat in my car, ready to follow the van, and typed the reply I had rehearsed in my head a dozen times. Just moving some old junk to a storage unit. I needed to clear space in the garage so we can store your equipment cases in there. Making room for your studio. I watched the typing bubbles appear, then disappear. Finally, he replied, Cool, thanks. He believed it because he believed the world revolved around him. I put the car in drive and didn't look back. I drove straight to my friend's apartment across town. Sitting on a borrowed beanbag chair in her living room. The silence was jarring compared to the constant noise of my parents' house, but my nerves were vibrating like a plucked guitar string. I had my laptop open, refreshing the order tracking page every 30 seconds. Status, out for delivery. At 11:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Auden. Even seeing his name on the screen made my stomach turn. Yo, what time does this locker place open? I want to go pick it up before lunch, so I can start filming. I stared at the screen. He was so impatient, so greedy. He couldn't even wait for the delivery notification. I needed to time this perfectly. I typed back carefully. I checked the locker hours. Because the value is over $5,000, they don't put it in a locker. You have to go to the secure front desk to sign for it. It won't be ready until the afternoon. Route drops off. Go around 2 p.m. Ugh, fine. 2 p.m. it is, he replied. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He was walking right into the timeline I had scripted for him. He thought he was picking up his future. He had no idea he was picking up a felony. The hours between noon and 2 p.m. dragged like years. I couldn't eat. I couldn't work. I just sat there, staring at the little digital map on the delivery app, watching the truck icon inch closer to Main Street. Then, at exactly 1:45 p.m., the notification popped up. Status delivered. Location, front desk / mailroom. Signed by C. Reynolds, front desk. My heart hammered against my ribs, so hard it hurt. It was done. The bait was in the trap. The package was now officially in the custody of the law, logged under the label I had created. ATTN, fraud unit / pending evidence. I immediately opened my Find My Friends app. I saw my parents' dots at home and Auden's dot moving rapidly down the highway. I disabled my own location, sharing instantly. I didn't want them coming to find me when the explosion happened. Almost immediately, a text from Auden came through. Got the delivered text. Heading there now. Thanks for not being a brat about this, Sierra. Maybe I'll let you design my logo for free. I stared at the message, reading his arrogance for the last time. He truly thought he had gotten away with it. He thought I was still his doormat. You're welcome, I whispered to the empty room. Enjoy the surprise. The next part of the story I pieced together later from the police report and the frantic voicemails that followed. But in my mind, I could see it playing out like a movie. Auden pulled his car up to 100 Main Street at 2:10 p.m. I watched his dot stop on the map. My phone rang. It was him. Sierra, what the hell? He asked, sounding annoyed. My GPS took me to the police station, and the tracking app says it was signed for by a C. Reynolds. What is going on? I gripped the phone tight, keeping my voice calm. Relax. Like I said, it's the municipal building. The police station shares the ground floor lobby with the secure mailroom, and Reynolds is just the guard at the front desk. It's standard procedure for high-value items. There was a pause on the line. I held my breath. A smarter person would have driven away. A person with a guilty conscience would have hesitated. But Auden wasn't smart, and he didn't feel guilty because he felt entitled. Whatever, he huffed. This is a hassle. Next time, just ship it to the house. He hung up. I set the phone down on the table, my hands trembling. He was going inside. Auden walked into the station lobby, wearing his sunglasses, looking every bit the impatient VIP he pretended to be. He approached the high desk where the sergeant on duty sat behind the plexiglass. I'm here for a package for Sierra, Auden announced, leaning on the counter. It's a big box. Camera gear. The sergeant, Officer Reynolds, looked up unamused. ID. Auden didn't have my ID. He pulled out his phone instead. It's my sister's order. I don't have her ID, but I have the tracking number right here in the app. See? He shoved the phone toward the glass. Reynolds typed the name into the system. I can only imagine the moment the flag popped up on his screen. The entry I had created on the label. ATTN. Fraud unit / pending evidence. The mood in the lobby must have shifted instantly. The sergeant didn't hand over a box. He didn't smile. He looked at Auden, this guy in a graphic tee demanding $5,000 of merchandise that was flagged as fraud evidence. Wait one moment, sir, the sergeant said. He didn't go to the back to get a box. He signaled to the side door. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, their hands resting near their belts, their eyes locked on Auden. At that exact second, my phone started ringing. It wasn't Auden this time. It was Dad. He must have been listed as Auden's emergency contact. Or maybe Auden had panic dialed him. I stared at the screen, watching it light up. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. The phone rang again immediately. This time the caller ID didn't say Dad. It said unknown caller. I knew who it was. I took a deep breath, steadied my shaking hand, and swiped answer. "This is Sierra," I said clearly. "Ms. Sierra? This is Officer Reynolds from the Main Street Precinct," a deep, authoritative voice said. "We have a gentleman here named Auden claiming a package addressed to you. He states he has your permission to collect these items." This was the point of no return. I could back down, say it was a misunderstanding, and go back to being the servant in the garage. Or I could burn the bridge and save myself. I closed my eyes. "Officer, I did not authorize that purchase," I said, my voice firm. "My business card was used without my consent. I flagged that shipment as stolen property because it is stolen property. Are you stating you wish to press charges for credit card fraud?" Reynolds asked sharply. "Yes, I am pressing charges." There was a brief silence on the line, followed by the sound of scuffling in the background. I heard Auden's voice, muffled but rising in panic. "She's lying. Give me the phone. Sierra, tell them." "Understood, ma'am," Officer Reynolds said. "Stay on the line. We're detaining the suspect now." Hearing the click of handcuffs in the background was the most terrifying and satisfying sound of my life. The trap had snapped shut. After the line went dead, the silence in the room was heavy. My hands were still shaking, but for the first time in years, it wasn't from fear, it was from adrenaline. I had done it. I had actually pulled the trigger. I looked at my phone. I had one last thing to do before I disappeared from their lives, completely. I opened a group chat with Mom and Dad and typed a message I had been writing in my head for 3 days. "Auden stole $5,200 from me. I gave him a chance to fix it, and you threatened to kick me out instead. I told the police the truth. It was theft. I don't live in the garage anymore. Don't come looking for me." I hit send. Almost instantly my phone exploded. Calls from Mom. Calls from Dad. FaceTime requests. A barrage of texts starting with "Sierra, what have you done?" and "Answer the phone." I didn't read them. I went to settings and hit block contact on both of them. Then I blocked the house landline. Finally, I blocked Auden. I opened my banking app, clicked on the pending transaction, and hit report fraud. I uploaded the photo of the police case number Officer Reynolds had given me. A moment later, a notification chimed. Claim filed. Charge disputed. $5,249 held pending investigation. I immediately forwarded the official dispute letter to my real estate agent with a note. Fraud investigation open. Funds frozen, but guaranteed. Police report attached. Please don't lose my lease. She texted back a few minutes later. I can hold the unit for 48 hours. Get me the funds by then. It bought me the time I needed. I hadn't won the war yet, but I had survived the battle. That evening, I sat on the floor of my friend's guest room, surrounded by the few bags I had managed to save. I didn't have my apartment keys yet, not until the bank officially released the provisional credit. But for the first time in days, I felt safe. My phone rang. It was my Aunt Karen, my dad's sister, and the only person in the family who saw things clearly. I answered. "Sierra," she breathed. "The whole family is in meltdown mode. Your parents are at the station." "I figured," I said, leaning back against the guest bed. "It's bad, honey," she said, lowering her voice. "They tried to tell the police it was just a family dispute and that you were overreacting. But because the amount was over $5,000, it's a felony-level larceny. And there was something else." "What?" I asked. "Apparently this isn't Auden's first rodeo. When they ran his prints, they found a prior DUI and a shoplifting charge in the next county that your parents had hushed up. Because he has a record, the police aren't letting this slide as a mistake. He's in a holding cell tonight." I felt a cold vindication. My parents had spent years covering for him, enabling him, hiding his mess. Now, because they forced me to involve the law, All his dirty laundry was being aired in public. The police were keeping the camera gear as evidence. Auden wasn't getting his studio, he was getting a mugshot. A week passed. The bank finally released the provisional credit, and I wired the deposit to the landlord immediately. I got the keys an hour later. I bought a cheap mattress and a desk and sat in the center of my new, empty living room. I started to breathe again. I thought the worst was over, that the battle was won. Then Detective Reynolds called me for a follow-up interview. "Ms. Sierra, we need you to come in," he said, his voice grave. During the booking process, we searched Auden's wallet. We found 3 credit cards issued in your name that he was carrying. The room spun. "What?" "We ran the numbers," Reynolds continued. "They have a combined balance of $15,000. The billing addresses for all of them were listed as your parents' home." My knees buckled. That explained why my credit score had stagnated despite my savings. That explained the rejection letter for a car loan last year that Dad told me was a bank error. They had been gaslighting me about my own financial history. 15,000. I whispered. The statements were being mailed to your parents' house, and someone was paying just the minimum monthly payments to keep them from going to collections. Likely to hide them from you, he explained. My parents knew. They didn't just know about the smart speaker incident. They had known for years that Auden was using my identity to fund his lifestyle. They were accomplices. This changed everything. This wasn't just a brother stealing a toy. This was systematic financial abuse. They had been drowning me in debt before I even had a chance to start my life. I authorized the detective to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Identity theft, credit card fraud, larceny. My Aunt Karen called me later, crying. "Your parents are begging you to drop the charges, Sierra. They said this will ruin the family name. They said Auden could go to prison. They want to meet with you." "No," I said, my voice shaking with a fury I didn't know I possessed. "Tell them I'm not dropping anything. They ruined the family when they chose to protect a thief instead of their daughter. They watched me save pennies for 2 years while they helped him spend thousands in my name." "I'll tell them," Karen said softly. "I'm proud of you." I hung up and immediately filed for a temporary restraining order against all 3 of them. I included the police report as evidence of financial abuse. I wasn't just burning the bridge. I was salting the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. 3 months later, I sat in my apartment, which finally looked like a home. I had a soft gray rug, a comfortable sofa, and art on the walls. The morning sun streamed in through the window, hitting my face. The legal battle was over. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the exposure of the hidden credit cards found in his wallet, Auden's lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to felony identity theft to avoid a longer prison sentence. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation, massive community service hours, and ordered to pay full restitution. He is now a convicted felon, which means his dreams of being a famous influencer are buried under a permanent criminal record. My parents were forced to use their retirement savings to pay his legal fees and the restitution he owed me. They are broke, bitter, and alone in that big house. I haven't spoken to them since the day I walked out. I took a sip of my tea and looked at the small, round device sitting on my new kitchen counter. "Alexa," I said, my voice calm and clear. "Play Freedom by Beyoncé." "Playing Freedom," the device replied. The music filled the room. It was my account, my apartment, my life, and for the first time, I was the only one in control.